So tonight, I am delighted to welcome Adam Aleksic, celebrating the release of Algospeak, How Social Media is Transforming the Future of Language. Adam Aleksic is a linguist and content creator, posting educational videos as the etymology nerd to an audience of more than 2 million. As a linguistics student at Harvard College, he founded and served as president of the Harvard Undergraduate Linguistics Society. He has discussed online language on NPR and repeatedly contributed to The Washington Post, and has lectured on language and social media at Stanford, Yale, Georgetown, and other top universities. He has done a TEDx talk at the University of Pennsylvania. He is based in New York, where he spends a lot of time scrolling TikTok for research. Aleksic will be in conversation with Aidan Walker. Aidan Walker is a content creator and internet culture journalist whose work has been published with the BBC, Know Your Meme, and other outlets. So please join me in welcoming to Politics and Prose, Adam Aleksic and Aidan Walker.
Hello, wow, what a terrific, wow, so many people, hello, hi, thank you for braving this muggy day, yeah.
Thank you for being here. This is a crazy amount of people. I'm substituting in for Kyle Chayka, but so happy that Adam and I have done Substack Lives together, hung out, he's in town. Happy to see my friend. I was meaning to attend in person anyway, so excited to be here.
Aidan Walker is a meme researcher, which is the coolest job title ever.
Yes, and we met through TikTok, through DMs, as all great things begin.
I was inspired by his skipadialectal materialism videos. You should check out his account.
And I was inspired by Adam's wonderful breakdown of sticking out your gyat for the Rizzler. Which brings me into my first question of the evening.
Of course.
Mr. Aleksic. How does it feel to be a book-pilled etymology maxer?
I hate that. It's really good to branch out into other forms of media. I think one thing I kept thinking about while writing this book is that every medium has its own constraints and its own unique way of limiting our speech. Algorithms famously inhibit how we speak. Algospeak. But also a book, I had to write in formal English. I had to every time I tried to write the word low-key, my editor would correct that to have a hyphen in it, which is crazy. So each medium has its constraints. I think it's good to communicate in as many different forms of media as possible so we can get our message out in maybe the most accurate way, because if you attack an issue from a lot of different angles, maybe you can kind of get at it better. And I also think separately it's good to consume many different forms of media. So, algorithms can be good. They elevate a lot of voices, but also, books are good too. Hey, crazy. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, very pro-book. One thing that I loved about this book in particular, it's a hot take being pro-book in 2025. One thing I loved about this book in particular was that question of constraint. You're talking a lot about algorithmic censorship and different ways that algorithms incentivize or prioritize certain kinds of words, and that this is a constraint and a limitation to people, but it also seems productive in some ways.
Well, the history of language, I think, is the history of humans figuring out how to be creative with different tools they have to communicate. There's, when we had only stone tablets and chisels, we're pretty constrained. And there was no spacing between letters because you had to cram everything in. And then you have paper and, now we can have spaces between things. We can have chapters. We loosened the constraints. Internet allowed for another loosening of constraints, I think. Mm-hmm. But also came with each new medium comes with its own form of who's controlling how we can communicate, its own form of the printing press, fantastic for popularizing vernacular printing, but now also there's all these institutional forces saying this is how you're supposed to write. Internet, great for informal speech, but now we have all these platforms coalescing and controlling how we speak, and algorithms, good and bad. That's how tools work,
Yeah, it's the ways people use them. And I know you as a creator and myself as a creator, we're often sort of struggling against it, but also working within it, so.
Yeah, I definitely acknowledge the irony of critiquing the platform that, I rely on. And also the irony of being a TikTok linguist and then writing a physical book.
I think it's an irony. One of the things that I love about this too is that I think it's the kind of book where it's not just wonderful for what's inside of it, but for kind of what it's going to open up. I think that Also, New York Times bestseller list. People know that, right?
Thank you.
But I think part of what you've achieved here is that you've opened something up for future books to come, for others to converse with you, and for, that to happen. I think it's great for...
Hopefully, I think there's a few directions of like academic linguistics that academic linguistics needs to figure out for themselves. One of them is that words have vibes, and if there's any linguists in the audience, just remember that, because there's like feelings we have about words that affect how we use them, and that's not something that like academic linguistics has caught up to yet. The other one is that algorithms are actually really shaping and defining every single aspect of how we speak, like where words are coming from, how words spread, how quickly words get popular. All this is like very important to be paying attention to right now.
Yeah, and the algorithm, it's words, it's language, and so much is downstream of that. So much of it becomes the vibe of the word is often the vibe of the context it's used in. And if these contexts are kind of being sculpted by these automated processes or our responses to them. One thing that's interesting about Algospeak is the concept, not the book. The book is very interesting too, is the way that some of its effect is just the way people anticipate the algorithm. That there's some things the algorithm actually does, and then there's some things people do, that kind of is a nod to it, like using unalive or something.
There's also like creators tend to overcorrect because we don't know when we're going to be censored. One example for like analogizing Algospeak to stuff in the past is early internet, there was leet speak, people trying to evade chat room text filters on the early internet. And you could literally just see whether it worked because you would see your message either posted to the chat room or not posted to the chat room. Now you can't tell whether you're shadow banned or not. So there's a lot of hyper-correcting. There's a lot of like, and sometimes the algorithm censors things to varying degrees. Sometimes it'll directly remove your videos. Sometimes it will shadow ban you. Sometimes it'll like just like not show videos containing similar sensitive topics in clusters together. So there's like degrees of how much they censor things. Creators have no idea that we get very little input from like platforms like TikTok. I had to purchase Meta Verified just to like get them to like take down this copycat account, and they still haven't done it. So really, we have very little like communication with these platforms, and we have very little knowledge of what they're actually censoring, what their priorities are. Their priorities are evil. If you take home one thing tonight, it's that. Remember that social media platforms their purpose is to commodify your attention so they can sell your data and sell you more advertisements. That's what they're doing. And then they create all these incentive structures for influencers to also get your attention. And I feel terrible manipulating you, but thank you for being here. But where I was going with that is that we don't know like what these platforms are doing. They're not very communicative with us for obvious reasons. And so one research paper I came across called it the algorithmic imaginary. This idea that we don't even know what it is, so we hypercorrect. We're like performing for the algorithm itself. Yeah.
So on that point a little bit, social media algorithms being evil, trying to commodify our attention, trying to hack our minds and our society. You were talking about different mediums. Each one is kind of its own medium. Instagram Reels has a certain limit. TikTok doesn't. YouTube is its own thing. So which one do you think is the most evil?
I think that answer changed in January 2025 when Meta loosened their content guidelines on AI-generated content and on, they did an anti-DEI, anti-woke rebrand, which practically means that we have a lot of really racist Instagram Reels now. We're like really crazy stuff. A lot of it's AI-generated too. Separate thoughts on that, but yeah, I think Meta is the most like. Maybe it's good for platforms to censor some speech. They're a great example of that.
Yeah, and you have Gold Chain Zuck now, which is a whole vibe shift for the culture. Perhaps an L for the culture. And like the interesting thing is that these guys have so much kind of power over the way we live, the way we think, the way we talk, and it just leads to the question, which I'd been thinking sort of concluding with, and you sort of end the book with kind of a beautiful description of it, but, given these circumstances, are we cooked? So
that's the chapter title for chapter 10. I I want to separate language and culture, and maybe you can't quite do that, but I do want to take a moment and try to distinguish this. With language itself, like we'll bandy around terms like brain rot. Words themselves will never rot your brain. There's never anything neurologically worse about one word than another word. It's just humans finding ways to express themselves. Like the reason we use language is we're identifying things in the world and sharing that with other people. That is why we communicate. That's why we use language. Skibbity isn't brain rot any more than the word Scooby-Doo, which also comes from scat singing. So, it's not actually any worse for your brain. And the middle schoolers saying Skibbity, it's not because of deterioration of culture. They're saying it because it's a funny joke. We said, my generation said yeet back in the day.
Yeet.
Yeet, yeah. Skibbity's the new yeet. Things, don't have to, be that deep. But they are, in another sense. So I don't think there's brain rot for words and language itself. I do think language is a proxy for culture. And by following the conduits of where words come from, you can follow the conduits of cultural shifts. And our culture is interesting because that's an individual subjectively defined thing. And so you can be culturally we're cooked, but your take might be different from Mark Zuckerberg right now.
It's never been better for Zuckerberg.
His culture is great for him, yeah.
Yeah, Zuckerberg's doing fine. Yeah.
There are patterns underlying where our words are coming from, and you can sort of point to that and be this trend is concerning that, we have language emerging to grab attention. We have, language coming from the manosphere and these incel groups. But again, the language itself is not harmful. It's maybe the ideas that are spreading along with it. And maybe there is a circular relation there with language and identity and ideas. But I do want to make that distinction so that people don't think all these younger kids saying Skibbity are ruining the English language. That's completely fine. Yeah.
English will survive all of us. Skibbity cannot destroy English. And the kids talking about Skibbity, it's a very deep show. There's a lot going on.
There's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that I really like that reminds me of Skibbity Toilet.
Please share.
Language is fossil poetry. And I really like that one. The idea is that it's just layers of fossils of words that were compelling to people in the past that get ingrained and stick on top of each other. And, maybe Skibbity's going to stick around. Maybe it'll be fossilized. Maybe it'll be, lost. But other things definitely will be part of that fossil poetry.
Do you think that's a little bit, like you were saying that words have vibes? Is the vibe the fossil? Is Skibbity haunted by the image of the 7-year-old? That
I think so. Each word has an echo of where it comes from. And we, whether we know the etymology or not, there's all this cultural context and sociological background to a word that we perceive when we're feeling out this word, right? It's interesting.
Yeah. And have you, as you've journeyed into internet etymology and you have a deep academic background thinking about all types of etymology and older etymology, these processes of evolution, the question is always what is new and different with the internet that English has been subjected to forces it's never been subjected before, and what is kind of the same? What is the term?
Well, that's the important difference in the book. If we were just talking about Gyat and Skibbity, I don't think I have a book here. As much as I would like to write one on just that. No, I think there's inflection points for language, and I kind of was talking about this. There's move between different mediums, and these mediums affect how we communicate. Algorithms are now a new infrastructure affecting how we communicate. This infrastructure is based on these attention incentives. It's based on how the algorithm amplifies and compounds natural human trends. We like memes. We've always had memes and fads and trends. That's not a thing exclusive to the internet. Algorithms push this extra because it captivates our collective fascination. So they push that. We've always had the idea in our head that we want to be in a group and then we want to separate ourselves from other groups. That's normal to make in groups and out groups. Algorithms compound this by pushing us into echo chambers and making us feel like we're part of something collectively effervescent, and then making us feel like we're different from this different tribe. Algorithms also just generally push the creation of words inside these communities. Now that there's a group together, when groups coalesce, they have a shared need to invent new words. They come up with language. So they're not only compounding the process of language formation, and we see that literally with words like unalive, which emerged because you can't say kill on TikTok, but not only changing where words come from, but then how quickly they spread by pushing these memes and fads and trends faster.
Yeah. And sort of on the question of how that sort of cadence changes, maybe that it pushes it faster. It feels sometimes like there's that first generation of internet slang, like yeet, for example. And now there's sort of what we have right now. Skibbity even is a little bit outdated. That's very like 2024 coded. But how do you sort of see, like, if leet speak is the first thing, yeet is when we were in high school or maybe early in college, and now we're in like the era of aura and like skibbity. Do you see structural differences to those like generations of slang, or would you even see them as like generations?
The words themselves, like structural, like they follow aesthetic underpinnings of what we think is funny at a given time. That's true, and the aesthetic underpinnings have changed now. Brain rot is funnier than I can't have cheeseburger, which for the young people is like a millennial cat meme. That was a different aesthetic underpinning which affected language. Millennials thought it was funny to have cute cat speak, and now we think it's funny to nonsensically repeat words that confuse adults. But, you know, the idea being that there's words that are funny to our generation, that's not new. There's nothing like in the phonetics of the word or something that's different. It's just like where they're coming from, how they're getting popularized.
Yeah, the route, but the commerce that's moving through it is still the same. It's still people trying to impress their friends, or people trying to be on top of a trend, or people trying to not sound old, or people trying to like kind of make that boundary between in-group and out-group.
Right, and one pattern I keep trying to emphasize in the book is no matter what your concerns are about the algorithm, it's still a human pattern playing out. It's still us finding things funny, so we say them. It doesn't matter, you know, whether they came from the algorithm. We still are adopting these words and using them because we find them funny, and you know, there's power in that maybe.
Yeah, like you had this Substack post a little while ago, which I really liked, where you'd drawn this diagram breaking down like what we talk about when we talk about the algorithm. You know, that it's really algorithms, you know,
Right.
on a technical standpoint, but then it's also that human side. Like a part of the algorithm is our conception of it as we're talking to camera, thinking, what should we say? What shouldn't we say? How should we, you know, do our voices? Should we do something like,
Right.
I'm here at Politics and Prose with Adam Aleksic, you
Right.
know, with the influencer.
Hey
accent.
guys, welcome to Politics and Prose.
I was doing the educational influencer
Yeah,
accent.
and
You've hit the...
There's also like the Mr. Beast, I'm at Politics and Prose right now, giving away $1 million. And all these people are like performing for different perceived audiences. They're all have an idea of who their target is, right? For Mr. Beast, it's brain-rotted 14-year-olds. For me, it's brain-rotted like average of 20-year-olds. Maybe with a more academic bent. But yeah, we're all performing both for that audience and then who we think the algorithm is going to send that audience to, and it all gets a little bit circular. And another like thing I really try to emphasize is not just humans, it's not just the algorithm, it's kind of both of these things affecting each other in a way that would not exist without either of the other. It's emergent, it's a complex system, it's all kind of happening at the same time, and both are affecting each other to create something wholly new that would otherwise not exist. And I do really want to address that thing about the algorithm, which is something like you can't avoid talking about, well, obviously, but like we tend to simplify and personify and anthropomorphize it. And that's because metaphor is pretty much unavoidable if we try to communicate normally. I could say, like, I can't even explain what the algorithm is because it's like hundreds of different algorithms analyzing your user data profiles, matching that with all these hundreds of different algorithms analyzing a video as it's uploaded, and then testing audiences for how engaged they are. And all of these are kind of different algorithms all working together to bring you a video, and there's a lot of points in that process where meaning is lost or context is collapsed, and along the way we reduce it and we say, oh, you know, the algorithm really knows me. There's no algorithm, right? It's a lot messier than we'd like to give it credit for.
Yeah. Or the algorithms know you, not in the sense that like your friend would know you.
It sounds like polytheism or something.
Yeah, they know you as the gods know us.
I think there is some weird algorithm God related. There was this great book I read, God, Human, Animal, Machine. People should check that one out. And also get this one.
Yeah, I also get this book,
Yeah.
And I even feel like there's like superstitions that sort of emerge from it.
You see this totally in the manifesting culture. Like, you know, well, also, I get these videos like revealing my art until the algorithm sends it to the right audience. And that's like, literally, it's like a form of like prayer or something. Like you're submitting yourself to this like God, hoping that it rewards you for your supplication. It's bizarre. but yeah, like, oh, this video was sent to you, like and share and you'll have good luck tomorrow. I'm not on this side of TikTok, but I know it exists and it's bizarre to me. Wait, show who's gotten these videos? All right, fascinating. Wow. Just goes to show we're in echo chambers. Somebody should write a book about that.
If only we had the guy. So I often get those, and I'll get ones that are like, this video means he's going to text you back. Or I'll get ones where it's...
Did he?
Well, it took a few days, but eventually, yeah. Or ones where it's like they're doing a live and they pull out a tarot card, and it's like, if you happen to get the live at this point in your scroll, then, you know, this tarot card was for you. And so there's a certain kind of sense that it's arranging chance. And because the algorithm knows you, it's given that to you.
Well, here's another thing, that humans crave coincidence. It's how we generate meaning from the universe, which is just, you know, it's messy, it's disorganized. We like to believe that stories exist. If I bump into a friend in a bar and I find out we're both from Albany, New York, I'm like, oh my God, that's a crazy coincidence. We're friends now. You know, but to a machine, there's no like, that's, you know, it's probable that there's something going to be in common or whatever, and so that's written off, you know. But for humans, that's the basis for how we form stories and how we form meaning. And when we look for meaning in a deterministic or probabilistic world where algorithms are just generating things based on statistical assumptions, there's a really interesting disconnect there.
Yeah, and there's an interesting kind of gap between the picture of the world which the algorithm creates and then the world we actually live in.
Right, you're looking at a very, very filtered version of reality. There's like several layers of filter that are applied. First, the video has to pass platform terms of service, right? If I'm talking about killing Donald Trump, that's not gonna go. But if I say, oh, somebody should do the thing, that's fine, right? There's clearly things you can and cannot talk about. And I said that in an academic context and not in a...
You are in Washington, D.C. right now.
Yeah. Remembering, you know, context matters. So it has to pass platform terms of service. There are so many videos that get filtered out on that basis alone. There are people uploading videos asking you to kill Donald Trump, and those videos are not getting shown to you. That's important to remember. Then there are videos have to conform to the platform attention incentives, right? Again, if you take one thing away from this, it's that these platforms are commodifying your attention so that they can sell your data and give you more ads. And that's what they're doing. So first, it passes the terms of service. Then it needs to be engaging. Otherwise, it doesn't get shown to you, right? I'm fascinated with the semiotics of chairs and how they signal like different things. I've made a few videos on chairs. They didn't do great. All my videos on Skibbity Toilet did fantastic. And that's because Skibbity captivates our attention, and you know it's going to go more viral. I try to be authentic to myself and throw a chair video in every once in a while. All right, so it has to be engaging. It has to conform to terms of service. Then it has to conform to the algorithm's idea of who you are. And there's a lot of like, I put all that in quotes because it's all loaded. First of all, any representation the algorithm might have of you is inherently a flatter representation of you than who you actually are. It's a map. The map can never be the territory. Second of all, we run under that assumption that the algorithm's actually giving us stuff, you know, for you on your For You page. You think that makes sense. You even associate this idea that you've put pieces of yourself and your identity into the algorithm. So implicitly, when a video is shown to you, it's like correct and it's meant for you. But half the time, it's just like what's going to make the algorithm more money. You know, what's going to grab your attention. That's why you get rage bait, and that's what, you know, clickbait and all that stuff that you don't actually want to be seeing, but is good at grabbing your attention. That's not really for you in that case. It's for commodifying you. Okay, so we pass like all these filters and all these like imbued like social internalized factors. Like you look at a video with likes on it and you're like, oh, this is good. People have liked this. It must be good. But the likes are like this kind of rewarded attention metric rather than like something that inherently is good. Like if you posted a static picture of the Mona Lisa, if Leonardo da Vinci created that today, posted a static picture of the Mona Lisa on TikTok, it's not getting, you know, likes. It's some random, you know, also Mona Lisa, that's also like internalized because it was stolen or, right? There's like, how we describe meaning to things is already arbitrary and weird. But interesting how algorithms like dilute that and distort that, and ultimately when we see something, it's this very flattened representation of reality.
Yeah, one thing about how we've always sort of segmented out, parceled, ordered reality through these processes that might feel automated is you have something like what made the Mona Lisa cool, right? It was that there was that theft attempt, or it was a successful theft, I think, in like the early 1900s, and then it got covered by like the press at the time. And there was like a big story around it, and then later on it gets put in the Louvre by the French state, which, you know, is a massive bureaucracy that, you know, reproduces culture in its own way. It's connected into all these systems, universities, places where people learn art, the books where you see the Mona Lisa framed as like the best thing ever. And I'm curious how algorithms differ from those kind of traditional forces.
That's a fascinating analogy because like I've cried looking at other paintings. I've never cried looking at the Mona Lisa. I've seen it twice. It's all right. It's a beautiful painting, but like, is it the best painting ever? Probably not. We have all these imbued like social things, and the algorithm also like circularly creates social meaning inside things that we see, and maybe that's how we ascribe meaning to things. Oh, the fact that this has a lot of views, this TikToker has a lot of followers, like it means I can trust him. Thank you.
And like it's sort of where it's back to sort of the what is new and what kind of stays the same question, you know, because they want ad money, but do you think there's also a sense in which they like the fact that they have this control over how people feel and think and talk? Do you think that there's...
Does Zuck like controlling people? Yeah, I think he does.
I mean, but does he still want money in your view? Like,
I'm not here to psychoanalyze Mark Zuckerberg. It's an exercise left to the reader. Yeah, well, I think people have always gotten off on controlling our thought and expression. And, you know, the Académie Française in Paris feels really good about deciding what the French language is, and the platforms feel really good about deciding how we can communicate. That's just classic. And then people feel good when they subvert authority. So, like, it's really cool in France to not speak that way and to use, like, verlan, and it's cool to use, like, African slang. But, you know, on TikTok, it's cool to generate ideas and concepts and memes that like feel like they are not in these neat categorizable kind of discrete buckets. And you had a great essay on Italian brain rot and how that fits into this. But that's definitely like when things feel like they're organic and real and human and not algorithmically prescribed, that feels good to us.
Yeah, and there's always that sort of tension, like with the Italian brain rot, where it's like, okay, you have tralero tralala, you have bombardiro crocodilo, you have frigo camelo. These are very different things, and we have videos describing each of them. And it feels a little bit that way with language. Like part of the joy of like sticking at your gut for the
I think it's that it defies categorization. It's like these shouldn't be words, but we're pretending that they are and circularly performing those words into existence. The more you say skibbity, the more skibbity is actualized. And, you know, Riz went from relative obscurity in the summer of 2022 to becoming the Oxford English Dictionary Word of the Year. Brain rot for 2024 was the Oxford English Dictionary Word of the Year. There's something that really speaks to, I don't know, that idea of let's purposefully rot our brains. Not that I think we actually are with the words, as I said. Separate stuff with like declining attention spans. That's not related to language, though.
So is that manifesting, like speaking skibbity into existence?
I think all of language is us manifesting it. It's just like we pretend like something. It's all of like society. We just pretend something exists until it does.
Yeah. Some of your recent work, I don't know if you guys follow him on Substack. You really should. Beautiful writer. Your most recent post, like today or yesterday, was on ritual and sort of the extent to which like the algorithmic setting is a ritual. And so how does that sort of tie into this? And how did some of like your current thinking or your next thinking, what kind of, after you finished this book, what were the open questions that it sort of suggested?
Well, after I finished this book, I started going off the media theory deep end. Sure, language is changing. What about like what we think is real? Sort of a direction I'm sort of cooking on a second book in that direction, but it's really under construction. Got to figure out how to make that idea accessible. But rituals are interesting. So like a ritual really is just you segment off a period of time and you pretend like it's more special than another period of time. Like the part where we were in that back room and you're up here, that wasn't real. You know, that was before the event. And now this is the actual event. This is cooler than that portion of time. But you know, it's completely arbitrary. You're still existing. You're like, you know. And then after this event's over, like, all right, this discrete event has finished, but you're still continuously flowing into this next. All right, so I've described how time is kind of like It just exists, and then we put little boxes on it to make ourselves feel better about living. And all right, so that's a ritual. And we perceive more meaning inside these boxes. Like the walk to here or from here might be less meaningful for you. I hope you do find meaning out of it. But like when we segment off the portion, it feels like sacred. Outside of it feels mundane or something. This doesn't have to be like sacred in a good way or in a religious way. When we look at when we open TikTok, we're immediately comforted with like the kind of this amniotic glow of the comforting TikTok logo, and we have this 3-second wait, and then all of a sudden we're, oh, dopamine. And then we're in the scroll state. And then you're in this weird flowing conscious space where, it's liminal, but it's also a separate portion of reality. And then you exit the app and that portion of reality is over. But inside that portion of reality, we feel like it's different, And often in a bad way, we'll segment this off and be like, oh, I felt terrible about that. But we still treat it as a separate portion of reality. So we can look at it as though it is a ritual. And now once we start looking at things as rituals, there's a lot of implications out of this. A ritual is when you perform a set of meanings and then you take new meanings out of it. The fact that we go on and we talk in these influencer accents, and then I interviewed a lot of people about the influencer accent, a lot of creators, big and small. Why are you talking like this? What's going on with this? What? Yeah. I can't, for myself, I'll say, I very deliberately do the influencer accent because I can't turn off linguist brain, and it's like very strange for me. But after a while, I turned it into a habit, and it's like now maybe like less conscious. I think that's habit forming. I'm describing habit forming, that things become routines. But a lot of people start with deliberate, thoughts. We look at our retention graph on TikTok, and we're like, oh, views dropped off here. What did I say wrong? And then we fix that over time. We learn, oh, certain intonations are good for talking, and going viral. So we learn that, and then we keep replicating that. And now there's people who haven't figured all that out, but they just start talking that way when they start making videos because they assume that's the correct way to talk online. And that's because you're replicating this ritualistic interaction that we've encoded, which is us giving more attention to the algorithmic god. Yeah.
So yeah, if we're worshiping the algorithm god and the TikTok situation is a ritual, does that make you like a priest? And is like then the influencer accent comparable to like using a liturgical language like Latin or something? Do you feel as if
I'll
you
take it. No, influencers themselves are doing like a little ritual. That's kind of what I was describing the influencer accent. But then when you perceive on your end, you're also engaging in a ritual. There's like anytime we feel like reality is different than other versions of reality, that's a ritual. We can look at it a little bit differently. There's I wish I could have gotten into that in this book, but maybe that would have been like too crazy. This is about words, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's a bit early to ask about the next book, considering that we're on tour for this one.
Right.
But you were mentioning a second sort of like your use of the influencer accent. And some of the best parts about this book for me are where you're kind of describing your own process or kind of what other creators said to you when you surveyed them. And so I'm kind of curious, how did you come to that? How do you document? You're like, one video I used uptalk a certain way and it did better. Do you note that down?
I'm not like the guy from you. I don't have like a spreadsheet. Like that would be crazy. But it's like you just sort of vibe it out over time. Part of it's maybe behaviorally conditioned. You just like see which videos of your own did well, and you're like, let me keep doing strategies that succeeded in those videos. Also, you can look at your literal graph of when people dropped off, and anytime there's a significant drop-off, I ask myself, why did this drop-off occur? That's, usually pretty helpful. So a lot of it was deliberate, and a lot of it was thinking through logically, why are some things better at getting attention than other things? Because again, at the end of the day, it's about commodifying your attention.
And another part of it, of your lore, which I learned reading inside of this book, was your engagement with Reddit before vertical video.
I used to be a Reddit influencer. I really wouldn't have brought that up unless it was relevant for the book. No, in high school it was a fun little game for me. I would like post on Reddit and then I'd go viral and be like, this is fun. I like seeing the numbers go up. It was like, it was sort of a game for myself to see like what would go viral. And a few other influencers I talked to kind of like playing that game. And maybe we're just like admitting that we like socially manipulating people. Yeah, it's kind of fun. But it's like, so you learn from these things what's good at innately getting attention. And a few of the other influencers I talked to also switched across different mediums, across, like they were also on Vine, or there was something before where the algorithm was different, the medium was different. But at the end of the day, there are like innate things that do get our attention. And there's a quote from this rage bait influencer, Louisa Melcher, in here, where she says, like, it doesn't matter at the end of the day what tweaks they make, it's just I have to know how to get people's attention. And as long as you can keep doing that, it'll work out. So the Reddit stuff was like really good training for me to learn how to get attention on things. Unfortunately, that requires sensationalism and requires like, I always start out my videos like, oh, this is the most interesting thing about this. It's just like one interesting thing. But like, there's always the implication the next video could have the most interesting thing. And so unless I tell you right now that I have the most interesting thing, I mean, somebody else could have it. You might as well scroll. So I have to like use that kind of sensational language. And I think an ethical content creator should like figure out how to strike a balance there and like, yeah, figure out their own boundaries of how much they want to be sensationalizing. Yeah.
I also feel, and I wonder if you feel this way too, that there's a bit of like a social contract with the audience, right? So like I see a video from you and I know that you have had good takes in the past, that you're somebody I respect, somebody who has ideas and like thoughts about the world that I also believe in. And I'm like, okay, he's doing a hook here. He's saying it's the most important thing, but I'm watching the video because it's Adam at the end of the day, and I know him. And I'm sort of consistently there. And I guess what I'm saying is maybe, you know, you can't describe yourself as like a con artist of attention. You know, like what you're doing, you're an artist of attention. Like I sort of understand your retention editing, you're doing this and that, and I feel audiences often do too, you know, so.
I think there is a lot of understanding. At the same time, it's hard to grasp, especially when you're in that dissociated TikTok flow scroll state, how much is going on behind the scenes. We're both fans of like these media theorists who were crashing out in like the 1930s about the switch from theater to movies. And the idea is with theater, you can see all the stuff going on behind the scenes. You remember that you're watching a play. And then when we move to movies, now you don't think about the production, you don't think about the casting, you don't think about the director, you don't think about all these processes as you're watching the movie, which loosens our grip on reality. I think algorithms are like another addition to us losing our grip on reality. In addition to all the movie stuff, like you probably don't think that for every 1 minute funny etymology nerd Instagram reel you watch, I sit in a cafe for like 3 to 4 hours and I read research papers and I script things out and then I carefully film and edit things to get your attention. There's like 5 hours of work that goes into a 1 minute video, and like you might be aware that there's like stuff like that going on, but you don't think about that. Why would you think about that? You're just here to watch funny Instagram reels, and you lose that awareness of all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes on my end. And then you lose why the algorithms bring it to you, because there's 500 different machines doing things at the same time. You lose touch of all that. And then we have like a looser understanding of what's actually happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of the draw of your content also is that it's a little like just pointing that out to people, you know, like it's funny that you're making videos on the internet about the internet, you know, and so it's like, but you'll show up between, you know, an Italian brain rot video and then some, you know, sludge content, and then someone, you know, like making a vase and like pouring ooze into it, you know, and like you're there as like the vegetable on the plate. Do you ever feel that way? And like you're so like you're
Thanks.
Frying. No, I mean like, you know, like you can prepare Brussels sprouts with sort of like the jam, or you're like bacon jam Brussels sprouts maybe. And so like, how do you?
I've thought it's kind of funny that my job is researching my own job. And if I look into that, I guess I'm researching the researching of, okay. But yeah, no, being a linguistics influencer, studying the linguistics of influencers can actually be quite useful. Like the fact that I'm publicly talking about new slang words means that I often get tagged in videos where new slang words are emerging. So now I have like first access, which is not something your standard academic linguists have. So I'm better. It's very useful. Hey, tag me in any videos with new slang words. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and that's like a key difference too, like in the way people work across social media, is you have this like feed right into what people are thinking and feeling. Like, you could open your phone at any time. You probably have 99 plus notifications, and you have comments of just...
It's very useful. As an influencer, you have to be tapped into the vibes. You have to know what the pulse is on social media. And if you're trying to study the pulse, which is, I think, what you and I are trying to do, like, it's very useful to do the work publicly because, like, you literally have to respond to it as it's occurring. That seems pretty useful to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And, okay, thinking kind of a totally different topic. What do you think is the video of yours that is most eternal?
So not the video about chairs. Well, I mean, most eternal as in the one that has the most views is the chai and tea one, but they come from different places. Oh, crazy. But yeah, I don't know whether that's like the most like enduring, socially. Some people have an extra fun fact at a dinner party or something. I don't know, maybe the book, does that count? It's a form of media I produced. That's kind of like, there's some things that are stickier than other things. Like if I want to package my ideas, that's how you spread your ideas. You have to roll them into like a ball and throw them at people. And that ball can be like more or less addicting, which is, how you get people to resonate with what's inside it. But some of them like stick around for longer. So TikTok will stop recommending my videos after like 2-3 days. And it's nothing's really permanent. Everybody forgets what things were in the past. Maybe that's the answer. That there's more persistent forms of media, and this is again why I started out by saying we should be consuming as many different forms of media as possible. I think that's definitely true. When you encode something in a more persistent medium, it gives your ideas greater longevity. It gives it no matter how much of a banger of a TikTok I make. And you're like, oh, this is really cool, and you save it and you heart it, whatever. You're not going to go back in your saved TikToks, or maybe you do, but a lot of people won't. And it's not going to have that persistence with which I want to carry my ideas, so that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, and I think this is eternal. It's hardcover. It can bear a lot of things that happen to it. It's a physical object in the real world. And it reminds me of something you said to me, because I feel like one of the first conversations we had, I was working on a story and I interviewed you for it. And you said that so many people look at what I do, what we do, and say it's about the form. And the most recent example that comes to mind for this is like, oh, Mamdani, he won because he was so good at vertical video. But what you were saying is that it's about the content. It's about
it's the content
ideas.
And the medium. Medium is something that holds content. Content literally is something that is contained. That's a really important metaphor. And the medium, both are important because Mamdani, for example, he had great content like this idea, let's make chicken and rice cheaper for New Yorkers, let's make affordable housing. That was a great, content. But he, other people could say, package that content in the medium of, oh, he's a socialist, don't vote for him. But he packaged this in the medium of like, I'm going to be a happy, cool dude on TikTok. And he was able to kind of roll through his ideas a lot better. It's all how the idea is packaged and how it's marketed to you, and that affects your ability to resonate with it. The medium will affect your understanding of the content.
Yeah, and so it's just sort of, the metaphor you used before was kind of rolling it up in a ball and figuring out how to throw it to somebody. But like, I guess the question is that different people will catch different balls. And so it's sort of like, how do you think about finding, like, who do you imagine on the other side of the camera when you're talking?
Oh, this is a very interesting question. Who do we imagine, right? I mean, clearly we are performing for an imagined audience, the Mr. Beast versus the entertainment versus the lifestyle influencer. We're performing for a different imaginary group. We're performing also for the algorithm at the same time. But the idea is, it's so lovely to see all of you in this room. I never would have imagined any individual one of you might have ever seen my videos. I don't know you as people. I'd love to see you at the book signing later, and then I will have a better idea of who my audience is. But no, I'm making the video, I throw it into the ether, not being knowledgeable of who's actually going to look at this. I went to the National Gallery of Art this morning, and there was a 13-year-old that came up to me and said, "Are you Adam Aleksic?" And I was shocked that there are 13-year-olds watching my videos. I didn't know that kid would ever be like the recipient. But the algorithm distributes content in unexpected ways. Once it's thrown out there, it just does what it wants with it, whatever's going to make the most money, because that's what these platforms are doing. But we experience like context collapse a lot here. Well, first of all, again, when you think it's on your For You page, it's never actually made for you. No offense. It's like I didn't think about any of you individual people. I had a general idea of who my demographic might be, but it's never for you particularly. And then you interpret it through all this internalized, ritualistic, like we were talking, lens that you think it is for you. And then this is also accelerates like the spread of some slang words. I talk about why so much of our Gen Z slang, a lot of quotes there also, comes from African American English. How did that happen? It's, it's a normal sociological process in one sense. Like you have words move through peripheral groups. You start with a lot of words in the ballroom scene in New York City in the 1980s, this queer, black, Latino, gay space. But then it moves to like, all right, just white gay people, and then moves to like the straight white girlfriends of gay men. That's a normal kind of sociological drift, but it might have taken a lot longer if it wasn't for the algorithm. Now, if you're a white girl and you're straight and you're looking at a video on your For You page and it's this queer black man talking to you, it's on your For You page, you think it's for you, and you think it's okay to say slay now. And so you start saying slay. And then now just 1 degree later, maybe your video goes more viral than that original video. Now 1 degree later, there's another white girl looking at this video, hears the word slay, thinks, oh, this is a white girl word, I can say it. And things lose context so rapidly online. There's also no regulatory function. There's nobody saying, well, it's so weird you're saying slay right now. So words are allowed to diffuse faster because of that context collapse. And that's just one of many productive forces. When I say that, that's a term in linguistics for something that just produces more language change. And I think algorithms are an immensely productive force. Literally, we can see that with the censorship example, how it'll censor words, will come up with new words. It literally produces new words. How it incentivizes us to come up with new trend bait vocabulary to capitalize on. How it then incentivizes us to push that vocabulary, how it incentivizes us to come up with new aesthetic microlabels, which isn't even something we got into here. But there's so many things the algorithm is forcing us to produce, which in one sense, there is a creative flourishing happening, but the other sense, there is that cultural question, which is a subjectively defined thing. And my goal is maybe make more people aware of what exactly is happening, because once you're more aware of that, then you can decide for yourself what you want to be saying, how you think our culture is evolving, whether these platforms are bad. They are.
Yeah, the platforms are bad. They're trying to milk you for money. They see you as, Zadie Smith had a quote in the New York Review of Books that they sort of see our minds as some kind of like orange juice futures, as pulp to squeeze, as just some sort of industrial commodity. And so I guess kind of circling back to the are we cooked question, because I'm sort of looking at the clock and wondering, what if anything, not that you are the person to solve the world's problems and the internet's issues, but like, how would you see like a more humane algorithm operating, or kind of like if you and Zuck body switched tomorrow, what would be the first thing you do?
That's a crazy question. Well, aside from that, I think there is a cultural undercurrent where people are realizing what these algorithms are doing, and there's a push towards decentralized media like Substack and Blue Sky and stuff like that, and maybe just Discord servers and maybe more in-person events. I do think that's maybe like a push among more elite people or something, and there might be like a class divide in who's consuming what media, which is something I'm really concerned about. But it does seem good that there's awareness that we should be consuming other media, and you see this literally reflected in our language when we talk about brain rot or how we should go touch grass or something. It's literally we are responding to these perceived ills through our language. But how could I visualize an algorithm that the thing is, these are engagement optimization algorithms, right? That's very important to understand. That's different. You could have a lot of algorithms that recommend content. All these platforms, when I say they're optimizing engagement, they're trying to get your attention the most, and that's why you get shitty content like rage bait and clickbait. Maybe an algorithm where you can tailor your own feed or actually have substantial suggestions, one where you're not being advertised to as much or at all. Yeah, it seems like engagement seems like a pretty bad metric for things that we want, and yet those are equated implicitly, which is strange. And so I would change that.
Yeah, I would too if I were Zuck.
But it's a bad business model, so
No.
I don't think they will.
Right on.
Oh yeah, okay. Yes, I think we have to do questions now. And then, well, I'm excited to take questions now. Oh yeah, wait. Yes, the lovely staff here are going to select people. So you can raise your hand and then they'll run over a mic to you.
Yes, we're going to do 3 questions. I'm going to choose 1 from over here and then 2 from over there.
Yay, me. Okay. First, this isn't a question, just a reminder. You have a captive audience. You could be telling us about chair semiotics. Okay, with that in mind, and on a completely different note, I've personally noticed on the internet that a lot of traditional, dialectal differences are sort of just being erased. You aren't really going to notice, on average, that someone's from Scotland or something, the way you would normally in how we communicate. And there are these new different sociolects being pushed by these algorithms. I guess what I'm wondering is just, how do you think these two will interact in the future? Are traditional dialects just going to be replaced by internet sociolects? Are dialects going to have their own sociolects for each internet community? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a fascinating question, and I want to emphasize that it's not the internet or algorithms that are actually causing these dialects to die out. There's a lot of evidence that they were going to die out anyway because of globalization and the increasing centralization of nation states. And this has been a trend we've been observing throughout the 20th century, that these dialects have been dying out. Internet, actually, there's a lot of great dialect revitalization efforts and language preservation efforts happening in Discord servers and websites. And there is some, movements to protect that. So, it's not the algorithms causing that, although, of course, everything's emergent. They're probably amplifying the homogenization of culture and causing dialects to die out. At the same time, what you identified is definitely correct, that there is maybe a replacement of offline linguistic variation with online linguistic variation, which makes sense. We're spending more time online. Of course, and we're creating all these new communities that otherwise didn't exist. Now K-pop stans can talk in their own strange dialect, which sounds completely unrecognizable sometimes to an outsider, but they're also coming up with new language. And I used the example of Delulu in my book, which came from K-pop communities. So I see that as a wonderful flourishing of language online. I'm glad the K-pop people exist. But yeah, you see all these online dialects emerging. A general linguistic rule of thumb is the longer a place is settled, the more linguistic variation will emerge. There are some sort of evolutionary analogies there, this sort of speciation of internet communities. Again, the history of language is just us connecting with each other. And if nobody wants to connect with each other using the Texan accent anymore, we can lament that, I suppose, but we're finding new ways to connect with each other, and that's kind of the point. So that's why I end the book on an optimistic tone. As much as I hate the platforms, it's about language itself. It's about humans, and we're pretty chill with that. Yeah. Hello.
Hello. I was wondering if you have any thoughts on the observer effect and how you maybe have a role in that, because obviously you sort of touched on this, but you are studying this platform by making videos on this platform that themselves go hugely viral, and do you think your videos affect the way people use language, and do you think this book will affect the way people use language? Do you have any concerns about that, or I don't know?
That's a fascinating question. I've thought about this a lot as somebody who publicly comments on language. It's I think it's been shown to happen before. I talk about in the book an example of the word chuggy, which was sort of trending for a week on TikTok. Then this great journalist, Taylor Lorenz, writes a piece about it and kills it. Now all millennials are asking, am I chuggy? Gen Z people don't want to say that anymore because it's used by this out group they don't like. It doesn't really pick up as a word. But it might have if it wasn't commented on. I'm not sure if it would have. But it's fascinating to think about. I like that analogy comes from physics because I think linguistics can learn a lot from physics. That is the one discipline where they recognize that by observing a system, you affect it. And a lot of humanities and STEM and all the sciences operate under the logic of let's separate the observer. Let's pretend this is an independent system and let's be Cartesian about this and we can study this. But in fact, you exist and you affect things. And it also recognizes vibes. By commenting on something, you change the vibe of a word. All those implicit stories and what a word could mean. I probably, played a very minor role in helping perpetuate some brain rot terms. When I made videos on like words like huzz and bop in like last November, they weren't that big, but then they got slightly bigger. And I'm not saying I'm the person who, but maybe it played a small role in helping that occur faster, or I don't know. There's no counterfactual I can examine. There's no like, I would love to A/B test the universe, but it's a fascinating idea. Hi.
Hello. Okay, obviously Reels and TikTok have different vibes, if you will, both as a content creator and a consumer of the content, especially with how you said that you have to kind of study the pulse. Do you ever find yourself stretched across the different vibes because of the two different platforms and subsequent different algorithms? And do you think that each platform has its own unique signature on internet culture?
Yes, I mean, absolutely platforms have their own signatures. This is sort of circular out of the user interface itself and then the platform culture. There's a lot of things differentiating TikTok, for example, that the user interface like allows you to sort by audio. They have a more sophisticated algorithm. The culture is one such that people chose to opt into these short form videos, whereas on Instagram and YouTube, you didn't sign up for those and they were just shoved down your throat, and that's going to affect the vibes of each platform. And the vibes of each platform will affect how I communicate. I kind of ran like a micro experiment while marketing my book where I was pinning comments on my YouTube, but I couldn't do that on the other platforms. And I sold 4 times as many books on YouTube than I did on TikTok to an equal-sized audience, simply because I was able to micro-generate this meme in the YouTube comments section where they would promote my book for me in exchange for a chance to get pinned. So that's like a literal example of how like commenting culture interacts with the user interface, and things do vary platform to platform for sure. Historically, I think TikTok has been more of a generator of culture, and your earlier part of your question was how do you keep your finger on that pulse if all these platforms have their own pulses? There are clear like emanators of culture that if you pay attention to, you can be more in touch with what's going on. So it's clear a lot of words have historically come from incels and from African American English. What's up with that, But maybe like if we study the incels and we study like why people are appropriating African American English at these rates, like you can learn a little bit more. And there's like accounts that you follow if you're like super in touch with brain rot memes, like which ones. I'm gonna gatekeep on that. But yeah, so there are ways to be more in touch. Also, I think YouTube Shorts has no culture that it's generating like across the platform. There's like individual creator culture, but no broad memes like really emerge out of like YouTube Shorts. But you do historically have seen a lot of that from TikTok. So it used to be more of a cultural space, especially because of another feature is stitches and duets, and that allows a cross-app conversation to occur that doesn't really exist on other platforms as much. The hyperlinking, it's all like an intertextual web connecting other videos to other videos. And so it's more of a user interface that incentivizes these cross-app discussions. I think that's one other reason why TikTok historically was so good at coming up with memes. I think now that Meta loosened those content guidelines, we're seeing a lot more of the AI-focused memes coming out of Instagram Reels. And again, there are accounts you should be following for that, but I really wouldn't recommend those. There are like ways to tap into the pulse. Some of it I wouldn't recommend, like studying incels. I think we have time for more questions, or do we? It's so amazing. We build up so much that we have to people all the way back.
Hi, my question was, do you think the internet will destroy smaller languages like Luxembourgish or Catalan in favor of bigger languages like Spanish or English? And do you think we ought to try to preserve those languages?
I'm not worried about Catalan or Luxembourgish because they're tied to national identity, and when language is tied to national identity, people tend to care a lot about preserving it. I'm more worried about like small like ethnic languages like in India or Myanmar or New Guinea or something where there's no real reason to preserve it because it's not tied to a national identity. So yeah, nationwide, I think languages are gonna keep existing. Call me crazy. I do think those like smaller dialects definitely, and again, this is a trend we've been seeing. they will unfortunately die out. But there are those cool preservation efforts happening at the same time. All right, one more. Hi.
Hi. So in the book, you talk a lot about like where these words come from and how the algorithm pushes them. But obviously, like the content creators are still creating the words. So what do you feel like for you or other content creators, your responsibility is whenever we have words coming from places like the incel community?
What's my responsibility? I'm not an incel. Well, actually, very rarely do people just like come up with words out of the blue. Like that doesn't really, like they tend to descend from other words in ways you don't expect. Like the word unalive didn't just suddenly emerge instead of kill on TikTok. It started with a 2013 Ultimate Spider-Man meme that got diffused into a Deadpool, or no, like yeah, it was on Deadpool on Ultimate Spider-Man, and then it turned into a Roblox meme, and then it started being used by the mental health space as like a tongue-in-cheek joke on TikTok, then got genuinely adapted as this like form of Algospeak. Oh, I said the thing. But like words often come from like very old lineages of other words. You can't just like start saying fetch and hope everybody starts saying it, you know. Is that it? Or?
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. What a lovely crowd. We're gonna do the book signings. Yeah. So happy all of you are here, and thank you, Aidan Walker, as well.
Thank you for having me.